Hey everybody, this is my 30 minutes of exercise, starting a little late because it's my first time and literally no one's watching, so that is okay. I work for Readwise. They don't know I'm doing this, but I work for Readwise, and one of the things I do in the mornings is I look at my daily review. It is 15, which is the maximum allowed, 15 highlights resurfaced from past books and articles that I read to help use spaced repetition to remind me of what I have learned in the past and what I thought was important. I am walking at 3 miles per hour with some stuff behind me, so that's a little tricky. But the reason that I want to do this is because I am much better at exercising if I am focusing on someone else and something else. And right now, I want to focus on my highlights while I walk. Walking isn't too strenuous, 3 miles an hour is just fine. And that's really all there is to it. So, a while back, I read an article about spiders being much smarter than you think. It was shared on Hacker News, which is where I saved it from. It was a lengthy article, as I recall, and this particular highlight was about house spiders. And I found it interesting because house spiders are adapted to living indoors. They can't actually survive outside for very long. So if you toss them outside, you're not really helping them. This article speculated that they are probably sort of originated from spiders that lived in caves and tree hollows, but they are one of the many, many, many species that have adapted to humankind and human life. There are lots of animals and creatures that are sort of adapted to very specific locations that don't really seem like it would make sense to adapt for. Like if you are stuck being that, what is it, the lichen or the fungi that can only survive on Stonehenge, that is not like really great for you. You have relatively limited options if Stonehenge goes away. So spiders that live inside are kind of screwed without us. It's like those sheep that like domestic sheep. There are lots of people out there who think that domestic sheep are really cute and wish that humans would stop messing with them. A lot of sort of philosophical opinions about what we should do with domestic animals. But with sheep in particular, if you don't shear them, they get so much fur, wool. They get so much wool that they can't function. They get trapped and they fall over and they could die from the overproduction of wool. Really, really ancient sheep probably weren't domesticated for their wool. They were probably domesticated for meat. From all of my research, I've been able to determine, like the best that I've been able to figure out is that most of our domesticated animals, like horses and sheep and cows, and pigs, we domesticated them for their meat because we used to hunt them, and then we started kind of like corralling them to kill them in mass, and then we started corralling them and holding on to them until we needed to kill them for food. So it was the same with sheep, but eventually we figured out that we could use their hair in the same way that we probably eventually figured out that we could ride horses. The rest is history. So really, that's all there is for this highlight. We're going to keep it, but it's a nice reminder that there are a lot of creatures that are extremely dependent on humans to survive. I'm clicking the wrong screen. Done. Okay. Comparing 10K gold with 14 karat gold. Oh, I actually used to work at a jewelry counter. It was one of my college jobs. Oh, golly. That's good. I just kicked something. So I used to work at a jewelry counter. I hate diamonds because of it. I used to have to count them twice every night, every morning, in midday. I don't really like counting. My wedding ring is moissanite because I just don't like diamonds. So the interesting thing about gold is that not only does alloying, like what it's mixed with, change the color. So like rose gold, which is really pretty, is mixed with copper. Um, I'm going off memory. I can't actually read, talk, and walk at the same time. I have an upper limit on my multitasking. But so white gold is mixed with platinum. Rose gold is mixed with copper, and yellow is sort of traditional. But there's also a question of gold is really soft. So 24 karat gold, it breaks and bends really easily. You usually don't actually want really, really pure gold for your jewelry. But there's the trade-off between like the value is higher if it's pure. So people who like are using gold as a status thing, they want more pure gold, but it is less useful as jewelry when it is too pure. So everybody has their preferences. Gold is special because it doesn't tarnish. You can also do white gold so that it looks like silver, but it's still gold, and it doesn't like corrode and get all yucky the way that silver does. I don't like silver. So this is just something I saved because it talked about alloying, and I care a lot about metals. I used to have a story idea for a whitesmith instead of a blacksmith, where the fairy, the elf, who couldn't handle iron, could handle tin and gold and silver and stuff like that. So it's an interest of mine. All right, here we have Brett Devereaux, who is a fantastic history writer who talks about a lot with Rome, which is his area of expertise. He's an adjunct professor somewhere, I don't remember. But Rome is his area of expertise, but the sort of thing that made him famous was analyzing books and pop culture, video games, for why they don't necessarily make sense in the context of real history. So he's talking about Star Wars. He's a huge nerd. It's great. So this was about Greece, actually, not Rome. But there's a lot of overlap in expertise in Rome and expertise in Greece. So this is talking about Greek tyranny and how we sort of tend to think, based on pop culture and things that are going on, we tend to think that tyrants, they just they get rid of the government, which isn't necessarily what actually happens. What is more likely to happen is that you have a guy who is very much in charge, and he keeps all the trappings of the government, but rules like outside of that system. So this happened in Rome too. Like Marcus Aurelius didn't abolish the government. Or was it actually? Yeah, sorry. Octavian didn't abolish the government. He didn't get rid of the Senate. He actually really needed the Senate in order to function. So, like usually, despite what we think about, a tyrant will come in and kill off the whole Senate and take charge and be just this one guy. Like usually it's much more back channel, like kind of like how the mafia might run things in New York. When you're gangs in New York, like the mafia might run things, but they don't get rid of the government. They just kind of corrupt it and work around it, and are like the guy that's really in charge. So this is hard to talk coherently while doing 3 miles an hour and reading at the same time. So bear with me, but this is fun. Apparently somebody's watching. Hello. Feel free to say hi in the chat. I think I can see it. Okay. How do Roman household gods relate to the primary deities, Jupiter, Neptune, and Vesta? Vesta is actually my favorite Roman goddess. I'm a big fan of the goddess of the hearth being super well, what's the word I want? Super well respected. There were lots of shrines to Vesta. She's important. She's the household goddess, the goddess of the hearth. The earth is very important. But so much of what we still have from the Romans and the Greeks was written by men who not just men, but like men whose primary concerns were not necessarily in the home. Like, Socrates like famously didn't get along with his wife. I doubt he spent much time at home. So like the interests of the normal people were much more oriented around Vesta, but the interests of the storytellers and the great men and the politicians and all of the literate class were much more sort of about Jupiter, who, like, let's be real, your average dude did not really care about Jupiter in his daily life, but that's what a lot of the stories are about. So this is about personal gods, I think. Cicero and Minerva, they worked really hard to have goddesses and gods that all sort of interconnected. It was a different vibe. And there was actually, I was just reading a book last night, The Silk Road, I think it's called. forget who it's by, but I was reading it last night, and the concepts were all about how the sorry, this is very disorienting. The concepts were all about how not only did like religion from Rome and Greece spread east, but a lot of religious aspects from the east spread west, from Persia and China, along the Silk Roads. So there's just a lot of with like Zoroastrianism and Buddhism, and it all meshed. There's lots of stuff going on with the gods and the cults that I don't have a good handle on, but hope to learn more about soon. All right, Alexander the Great wasn't the first superhero. That's fun. That title must go to Hercules or Gilgamesh or somebody completely forgotten. But he must be the first. Jesus. I gotta be farther away from that. Okay, so the first superhero to get the full treatment complete with his own extended universe. So I guess this is about, I don't know, like this is like the sort of the best, like the earliest fan fiction in the like mass production of books era. I honestly don't remember much about the Alexander romance, but as I remember, Scott Alexander thinks it's great. So maybe I should look it up sometime. I do think that superheroes are really cool, sort of like modern gods in a less Neil Gaiman-y sense. And there was also a review that, oh God, was it Z? One of the rationalist guys were talking about, kind of going back and forth about how Marvel does a better job than DC Comics with making sure that they're tapping into sort of the American id and American culture with things like superheroes and gods and mythology and religion. And it really sort of made me want to do things with comics and my kids. All right. Okay, Sparta wasn't that effective in war. Were there any hyper-militarized groups that did have success? I have to fix this. I'm gonna hurt myself. Whee. Okay. All right, the warring states qualify as trying to min-max military power. The end result looks nothing like Sparta, real or imagined. Okay, so this is about how the warring states era China were an example of a non-Roman group that really emphasized military power. I don't remember much about this. I should probably just discard this, but actually I should use it as a reason to go learn more about the warring states period. So I'll keep it. Keep looking at their own page. Okay. Whew. Not bad, almost 15 minutes. So this is defense of complicated programming languages. Okay, let's see. Advantages and disadvantages of the complexity of modern programming languages. What should one conclude? It's a matter of opinion, not a matter of fact. The only resolution for us as professionals to use our judgment. I love this. Okay, so this is how I feel about note-taking philosophy. And I have an exercise philosophy, actually. I have very strong opinions on the fact that there are lots of correct ways to do things. There are lots of ways to be a good parent. There are lots of ways to be a good programmer. There are certainly lots of ways to take effective notes. There are effective ways to do a lot of different things. So whether you are one of those people who uses Vim or one of the people who uses Emacs, whether you are one of the really hardcore people who use VI, because that's the one that's really always installed on a low-level device, no matter what you do, like it's not always true that Dvorak is faster than Clarity, because everybody has their own special like quirks and systems. It would take me years to get as good with Dvorak as it takes me, or as I am with QWERTY keyboards. It took me like 18 months to get good with a Mac, and I'm still really awkward with it compared to my Windows computer. So whether or not like a Mac is more effective than a Windows computer is like it's personal. So some people like Rust, some people like Python, and that's okay. Oh, maritime disasters. This one's fun. Oh, I need water. All right. Maritime disasters. Okay, so this is about one of the big problems in the Arctic. I think this was a whaling ship. Probably a whaling ship, just by context. All right, so a lot of people died. That's sad. Captain went down by the ship, or went down with the ship, but got rescued. They made it to lifeboats. Oh yeah, okay, so this is one I saved because it's an example of like sailors have to rescue the passengers first. Doesn't always play out that way. We get really a lot of aspirational fiction that talks about how the the captain goes down to the ship, women and children first, and all of that. But when the rubber hits the road, people want to save their own lives, and that takes a lot of conditioning to overcome. Oh, hello, Readwise. Yes, I'm just having fun with it. Feel free to ask me questions. This is just my morning workout routine, so that I am not so in my own head that I want to stop exercising. It's like social. Okay, so the Mughal woman who didn't stay in the harem. We have these problematic pictures of history, essentially because of a male sense of disbelief. The history was mostly male, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so we don't know a lot about the harems, is what this is saying. And I was reading this article because I had recently read a book, a really great book by Michelle Segarra West, that does a fantastic job of looking at harems from sort of the Middle Eastern. It's a fantasy novel, but it looks at harems and talks about harems, but we know almost nothing about them, even though harem women were probably pretty influential, because the the writers that we have were politicians talking to other places, but these were very private spaces. So it's just I don't know what Socrates' wife felt about Socrates, and I kind of would like to know. Socrates seems like a jerk. His wife was maybe cool. Maybe she gets a bad rap. I don't know. So terms are cool. All right. An obligation to be optimistic. It's contagious. It is less of an intellectual position than a disposition. I was just arguing with somebody about this today. So I was having an argument with somebody today about email jobs and whether high-stress email jobs are inherently more important than low-stress email jobs. And I said that was nonsense. This is going to sound like pandering because I work at Rewise, but it's not. I really did have this argument today with somebody who doesn't have anything to do with it. And I was saying that if I had a worse boss who didn't understand that I was working as hard as I could and doing as much as I could, and that I am really productive and good at my job, that I would be more stressed out, but I wouldn't be more productive. I wouldn't be doing a better job. I would just be more stressed. But I don't think stress is the right way to measure how useful a job is. So I think that it's important to surround yourself with people who are not stressed out, even when they have a lot going on. They always say, if you need something done, ask a busy person. Because, I don't know, it's just people who can take on things. They're fun to be around. They get more done than when you're depressed. And I have spent enough time in my life being depressed and miserable to really value happiness. All right, what do we got here? Z. All right, Z is a rationalist guy. Pretty popular, I think, on Substack. He writes a lot about AI, which I follow professionally and personally. AI is interesting. I just added a AI statement to my Substack, actually, explaining how I use AI, which is not to write, but I use it for research and stuff. For Readwise fans, we just shipped Chat with Highlights, which is a great search feature that talks about, this is really hard walking and reading. Chat with Highlights is a really good search for your highlights. So if I ask it, hey, what are all of my highlights about venture capital, it would return this highlight and a bunch of other ones with an actual link to the highlight, so I don't have to worry about hallucination. So this is all about venture capital, which I largely don't care about. My company is not venture-backed or bootstrapped, but this idea of how venture capitalists think is useful for me in a lot of ways and for a lot of reasons. So I highlighted it because the idea that venture capital is risk averse is weird, but probably I think he's right, that there's a fear of missing out more than a fear of other kinds of failure, but it is still fundamentally fear. And when you're afraid of something, you don't want to risk that fear coming true. Okay. 4-year-old. My son's 5 now, so let's see. By a 4-year-old to an older sibling, maybe don't do it like that. That's wrong. If you do it again, I'll cut you to pieces and throw you in the garbage. My son definitely had a stage of a month where he would say things like, I'm going to throw you in the garbage. And it was so annoying. And this book really helped me realize that it was totally normal and become a lot less annoyed at my kid. So I do have to say, I need to pick up a new Louise Ames book about 5-year-olds because my son just turned 5. So I'm glad I came across this highlight. I'm gonna tag it. Bear with me. So action. I need to remember that's an action item I need to do something with. I need to buy the next book. My kid's old enough now. All right. Okay. Housing the occult. Superstitions shape architecture around the world. In the American South. Oh, okay. So this is about paint. This is so I have sort of a recurring theme with my books, or sorry, my my articles about practical rituals and things that are like useful. The ancient Mesopotamians had very specific paint that they would use for the walls in the Levant to help get rid of plague. And it sounds silly, right? Paint. Like the paints aren't real, the ghosts aren't real, all that. There's no witches, but you like it's useful. If you use this paint, it might actually work to keep insects out, which is cool. So I, at some point, not today because we just shipped a bunch of features yesterday, and I need to get to work after this. But I have an article about practical rituals, and I should really like have this be an addendum, maybe a Substack note. I don't know, but I want to share this with people because it's a fantastic example of how rituals that seem silly on the face, like paint, can actually be useful, like scaring off insects or whatever. I don't know. They don't really know either, but it's possible. Right. Parasite eggs have been identified from concretions inside a Roman ceramic vessel. Jair's pot must have been used to contain human species. Okay, so they did archaeology in Rome and discovered some parasites in human feces. I read this book about poop. It's not Everybody Poops. I also read Everybody Poops. That's like a kid's book. Oh golly, it's called. There's one called Holy Shit, which is back there. Sorry, I can't get off the treadmill. I own a book called Holy Shit. That is just a look into all kinds of like farming techniques with poop and compost. But there's another one that's really good. And I gave it to my father-in-law gave it to me, and then I annotated and gave it back to my father-in-law. So I don't have it. But it was about poop. So one of these days I need to write down everything I know about poop. There's an interesting article percolating in the back of my mind about the role of poop throughout history and in human cultures and compost, and how composting is actually much harder than people make it sound. I hate composting and I regret ever doing it. It makes so little dirt. There's so much time and effort. Okay. Oh, Adderall shortage. A friend of mine got hit by the Adderall shortage. A lot of people with ADHD need Adderall. All right, so this is by Matt Stoller, who's very anti-monopoly. He is he's a writer sort of on the left, I guess. Who is through his Substack, I'm not sure if it's actually a Substack, but through his newsletter, managing to influence policy in DC about how monopolies are bad. You obviously have the other side, the libertarians, who think that monopoly is just natural forces working in the economy. I've read some actually really interesting articles about how if we had more monopolization allowed in places like Korea and Africa, it'd be better for their economies. So there's a lot of back and forth. And I'm just some lady. I don't get to influence policy. But I like learning and reading about the back and forth. So this is about the Adderall shortage and how pharmacies are captured by pharmacy monopolies and how that's really messing up pharmacies. As I recall, he doesn't talk much about the role of regulation, which is certainly also, I think, playing a part. There's been a lot of back and forth in the chattering class sphere about regulations making it the reason that we have a dentist and dental hygienist shortage. I have a cracked tooth, so I care about that a lot because I have to wait a month to get my cracked tooth fixed. Not thrilled. So this is just about all of the economic implications of policy and how it affects regular people who, for example, need Adderall. All right, that was my last highlight. 15 highlights, 25 minutes. Not bad. I intend to do this every Thursday. So check back next Thursday for another live stream of me doing my daily review and hopefully learn something. And again, feel free to ask any questions. You can hit me up on Substack, probably more easily than Twitter. You can always shoot me an email very easily if you find, if hard to concentrate after all the walking. If you just Google Eleanor Koenig, you can find my email address. I'm pretty responsive. Thanks for hanging out. I'll be back next week because I do all the walking and meetings too. But Thursday is the day I don't have any meetings. And I have a meeting in half an hour that I really need to get ready for. And some emails to answer. So signing off to get to work. Have a great day, everybody.